Thanks for tuning into the Replatform podcast, sponsored by Attract and Hypersonics and hosted by me, James Gerd. Warm welcome. It's your first episode. We put a lot of time and effort to bring in amazing guests and cool content to you absolutely free of charge. Help us keep it that way. Tell other people in your network about us. Share our posts on LinkedIn and Twitter. The best thing you can do to help is rate the show on Spotify, YouTube, Apple, or wherever you're listening or watching. Really helps boost visibility. Well, let me set up our latest episode and then introduce you to our wonderful guests. We're talking about increasing marketing opt-in acceptance on e-commerce sites with Dataships. We're going to cover how they're helping online businesses grow marketing audiences compliantly. The focus on compliance here is a really important one. The value of dynamic consent forms and things like satisfying compliance needs for data consent, amongst other topics. So let's first welcome the founder who has a background in founding businesses, founded Fantasy Rugger, which was acquired by Rugby Pass, where he then moved, and then co-founded Dataships in 2019. So welcome, Michael. How are you?
I'm very well, James. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me up.
Before I introduce Ian, do you want to just give people a background to yourself and Dataships?
Yeah, so do you want the long version or the short version?
Yeah, short one, otherwise people fall asleep.
Okay, so at Dataships, we help e-commerce stores optimize their consent collection, is the short of it. And, this really has two key benefits. It makes sure that you're compliant across all the different jurisdictions that you're marketing in. Collecting data is a very nuanced, sticky problem that, when you unpack it, there's a lot to it. So that's the first benefit. And the second one then is really using that to grow audiences. So by optimizing how you're actually collecting it and being clever about it and leveraging some of the lesser known laws that you can actually use, we're able to grow significantly email marketing and SMS marketing lists. How we got into this not so glamorous world was, at the heart of it, we're data privacy experts, and we were working with a lot of, big corporates, banks, and big corporates, and then kind of pulled into the e-commerce space because it's obviously where there's a lot of personal data being exchanged. And really, we were getting the same questions over and over again. People aren't, necessarily awake at night thinking about, I need to make sure I'm data privacy compliant, but they are thinking about, how do I grow my business? How do I grow my audiences? So the questions we were getting were, can I use this list that I have here across different jurisdictions? I have an old MailChimp list. Can I upload this into my Klaviyo and start using it? I'm launching it to Canada or the US or Germany. Do I need to be thinking about anything different? So these were the questions we were getting. We were answering them in a consultative basis. It always came back to, it depends on how the data was collected. So we figured out pretty quickly, if we actually just installed a tool that collected data on behalf of the stores, we could really optimize this and drive really good results. So yeah, and that's, it's additive to revenue, which is a nice way of framing it. So that's the short version, believe it or not.
Yeah. No, that's really useful. Thanks. It's always good to get positioning for people before we get into the rest of the questions. And let's move over to you, Ian. So I discovered prior to you during the call, Ian, that you and Michael went to school. I had some background. You were also at Fantasy Rugger as a director, so you've got a common background in launching businesses. And for those listening who love e-commerce and like sport, we've got an extra special link here because I think some of you might well have already recognised Ian. He's an Ireland international, played rugby for many years. Was played in the UK, in England, in Bristol, and then more recently at Ulster. So obviously, as a massive rugby obsessive, this is brilliant for me as well. So welcome to the podcast, Ian.
Thank you very much, James. Yeah, so I was lucky enough that Michael approached me back in 2015 with the idea of Fantasy Rugger, and we've had a great partnership since then in selling the first business and then growing Dataships out really as initially a data privacy company, and then moving into the email collection space and Shopify and Klaviyo specifically. So I would say I am very passionate about data privacy, and mainly in helping our clients use the data privacy laws to their advantage. And we're able to do that through our extensive knowledge of the data privacy laws, and making sure that the end consumer is being presented with the right data, and maximizing the number of people who can effectively opt in for email marketing, so our clients can email market to more people compliantly. So I help run the partnerships and manage the events budget and do some outbound sales. And it's been a nice transition from the high pace life of professional sport and moving into e-commerce. It's been really enjoyable. I've been really, really, pleasantly surprised with how friendly and helpful everyone is. So thanks a million for having me on the podcast. I've really enjoyed listening to it, and it's great to finally be a guest.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this. Well, also, there's fewer injuries doing e-commerce as well. So,
I actually got some paper cuts here, so it's not all rosy.
We've got a lot of interest, and I love this topic because when you reached out, when we talked about it, compliance used to be seen as, oh God, somebody in a legal team somewhere needs to make sure we're okay against law, versus, well, actually, this is about customer experience as well, and making sure that we're giving people the option to be involved in our marketing programs when they want to be, and that we're only talking to the right people. So it is so important to flip it from just compliance to actually this is enabling businesses to be smarter with how they engage with customers. So that's going to come out during these questions. So the first one is, let's talk about the changing face of data compliance. So for those who aren't knowledgeable about this, and we've got a real mixed audience, like, what do you find the biggest challenges business face around this, especially those who don't have experienced compliance officers?
Yeah, I mean, it's a real quagmire in terms of, if you're setting up just a Shopify store, you're collecting a lot of data. You're collecting data from people all over the world potentially. Even if you're a UK store, you're going to have people coming from France, Germany, Ireland. You're also, how you're collecting data if somebody's purchasing from you is different to if they're just signing up for a newsletter, etc. So oftentimes when we're talking to companies, the types of, an e-commerce brand, they don't have a dedicated compliance officer. So they're being left to try and figure this out, by themselves. And really the biggest problem that we see is that the platforms themselves, make it very hard. So if you take Shopify, for instance, they've got a one-size-fits-all way in which you can collect data at the checkout, for example. So somebody goes through the checkout, you can have a box that says, email me with news, whatever it might be. You can leave that unticked, in which case about 25% of people who are purchasing from you will opt into that. Or you can have a pre-ticked, which is, it's non-compliant to have a pre-ticked box if you're relying on consent. And that's in the UK. So, but then in Germany, you need to have double opt-in consent. In the US, you don't need to have explicit consent. So already, you've got to pick basically one of those ways of collecting data. Safe and anonymous that you're going to be non-compliant in certain jurisdictions. So that's kind of the biggest problem is just, we've got a team of 10 data privacy experts, ex-head of data privacy in IKEA. We've been doing this for years. My co-founder Ryan was doing this in Accenture. So we have extensive knowledge, and even still for us, keeping abreast of all these regulations, how quickly they're changing, how it's different in different jurisdictions is hard. So I'm not sure how as a marketer or as a store owner or a CRM manager, you're actually supposed to kind of to know this. So it's a real tough one for them.
Attract, your complete product discovery growth engine. Create relevant shopping experiences that convert into sales and grow online revenue with personalized search, merchandising, and recommendation solutions powered by AI. Find out more at attract.com.
I think that leads nicely onto the question around dynamic consent forms, because this is one of the key selling points of your solution. And you're right, for a lot of people, they take a standard site and it has a standard ability to put an opt-in consent, but it's one size fits all. Can you talk us through, because obviously one site, you've already alluded to this, one size fits all is dangerous for data privacy because of the variance across different countries. And you automate the compliance to be compliant with different privacy laws. Can you talk us through the dynamic consent form piece and what exactly it does and how it works?
Yes, the way our tool works is it sits at the point in which you're collecting data, and it will read basically where the end user is. So are they in the UK, are they in Germany, wherever it might be, and then what the context of collecting that data is. Is it at the checkout? Is it a newsletter? Whatever it might be. It will surface then different language and a different mechanism for collecting data based on that knowledge. And a really good example of the benefit is in the UK, if you are, you don't need to get explicit consent from somebody to market to them if you're collecting their data within the course of a sale, and you give them the opportunity to opt out at the point of purchase. So, for instance, at a Shopify checkout, that's what we will surface to the end user. We'll say, hey, you've purchased something here, we'd like to send you some news and views. If you don't want to hear from us, opt out here. And about 80% of people who go through that consent collection mechanism will end up as marketable, so they won't opt out, and that's perfectly fine. That's what the law states you can do. You can't do that if you're collecting. It's just a newsletter, for instance. You can't do that. But knowing those things. So as consultants, we were telling people these different things, and then second of all, that's what the tool will do. It will read what the most compliant way, but the optimized way of collecting that data. So you're getting much more marketable data through. These brands are spending a lot of time and effort on, marketing, collecting those precious email and SMS numbers. Somebody's purchasing from you. It's a really
and I think on that web as well. Like that's a great example for a store that's selling solely into the UK. If you have a brand that's selling into Germany, that box that comes up on the thank you page will ask the customer to opt in for email marketing, and then they'll have to double opt in via email. And then that would be kind of more the stricter side of data privacy. Whereas then if you look at America, for example, if a customer has purchased off you, you can legally email market to them, provided you present them with the privacy policy at the point of checkout, and then they're automatically enrolled in your email marketing. Providing then you've got obviously the unsubscribe buttons within the emails and all that exciting stuff. So it's I suppose presenting the correct data privacy laws, and then as the customer is flowing through the website, we're maximizing their buyer behavior and when they're going to opt in or opt out.
Yeah, I think the great benefit is taking away that level of automation that needs to be built into a platform to change forms dynamically, and just doing it via an app or via third-party solution is great because you just put it in and it makes the decision. So that's my understanding, right? You're automatically deciding which version based on the territory of the shopper, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So the benefit to our customers are we get a lot of people saying, this is great. I don't have to think about this at all. I don't have to think about, am I asking people to opt in, opt out? Do I have consent? Whatever it might be. We're taking care of all of that, configuring with Shopify Cloud, configuring all of that. And then we hand over audiences. We say, here's your email marketing, your SMS marketing audience. So first of all, it's like, great. I haven't had to think about that, safe in the knowledge that it's compliant. And B, what we're saying is, hey, prior to us, about 20% of your 100,000 purchasers were ending up in your Klaviyo or your email marketing tool. Post us, you've now got about 80% or 80,000. So they're going, wow. And then they're doing the math. We're not the marketers in Squasia. We're handing out these audiences, and then they're saying, wow, now I've got an audience of 80,000 people as opposed to 20,000 people. And then they're working their magic in terms of, email marketing campaigns, driving return users and LTV and stuff. So that's the real benefit to the customer there.
And you've talked about you're able to increase the percentage of contacts collected with marketing permissions, which is massive because lots of marketing teams get frustrated when overly eager compliant office has shut down any proper opt-in, and it's all very strict. Is it simply a question of you exercising the decision about when opt-out is permissible? Or what else is it? What else are you doing to help get this uplift for people?
Yeah, that's a key part of it. I mean, some people, when we go into a client, first of all, they might have a whole host of problems with historic data. In terms of how it was collected. Somebody that's left the organization, they don't really know. The data might not have any metadata on it to say this person consented or not. So that's a big part of it. Then, they might have just configured a double opt-in everywhere because, like you say, an over your compliance officer, whatever it might be. But yeah, I mean, it's really just down to, if you think about all the different, the two factors, all the different jurisdictions and all the different, context stuff, whether it's a purchase or a newsletter, that there could be. There's lots of different ways that lots of different consent mechanisms you can use in terms of opt-in, opt-out, double opt-in. So it's actually not so much that, for those ones, it's about knowing when to use them really and the nuances around that. But yeah, I mean, the way we kind of think about it is we deliver this dashboard to the end user and we say, we've brought it from 20% to 80%. We've unlocked these emails. It's very simple. And to your question, you're kind of going, is it just, using the soft update? But then behind that, there's a huge amount of, kind of think about it as like an iceberg, and that's the tip of the iceberg of the value. Behind that, there's a huge amount of kind of data privacy, things we're doing in the background in terms of creating robust compliance logs, making sure that if you are relying on legitimate interest, that things like a legitimate interest assessment have been done, that we have the proper legal basis assigned to the contact, that we're linking in with KBL for unsubscribers, we're linking in to global opt-out registers, which is a big thing in the States. So there's all of that kind of, we call it the rules engine, the kind of magic rules engine that actually outputs that. And that is the kind of foundation that all of this is built on. But a lot of that is snorefest in many ways, until it's the biggest problem in the company for someone. So what we do is we don't come in and say, look at these amazing audit logs we're going to create, because people say, oh, that's not really that interesting.
Yeah, we will think on that point, like ultimately what Dataships audit means, we want to be our client's source of truth for who is marketable and who is non-marketable. And that is ultimately when Mike is talking about, the compliance logs and whatnot. That's working in the background. Our clients don't have to really engage with that. That is there if you do get audited or you have a disgruntled customer coming to you. But ultimately, on the face of it is, these are the people who you can market to, and these are the people who have either unsubscribed or you cannot market to.
Yeah, and it's really important to have that covered, because it's not exciting talking about compliance logs, but actually, depending on where you are, the fines for being non-compliant, especially for larger businesses where the compliance officers tend to go after to make examples of, they are sizable, because the fines are based on revenue. They're not just like one-off amounts. So it's so. And I've worked with a lot of businesses where there is always somebody who wants to know how they can demonstrate the opt-in history of a customer if anything gets raised, and they can do that audit. So that's so important to have.
And on that as well, it's a good point you mentioned, because we get a lot of clients coming to us when the horse is bolted, and they say, we've just been issued a fine here in the States, or we've had somebody who's reported us to the ICO in the UK because we shouldn't have been on this email list or whatever it might be. And then they're saying, what happened? And it's really hard for a marketer, or, it comes back to the person who set that up, and they're kind of going, well, everyone else had a pre-tick box, so I kind of did a pre-tick box. And, they're probably, without knowing, they're kind of just stumbling into this and thinking, I didn't even realize that I wasn't going to do that. Or I didn't even really, So it's, so what we try and say, get out in front of it and hand it over to us, and we'll just, we'll take care of it, basically.
Well, it's the reassurance factor. And I imagine in some businesses where they have compliance officers, that will be a stumbling block if a solution didn't provide it, because they want to know that if they're called upon, they can provide that access to and validation of why somebody's on the list or why they're not. Let's talk about implementation then. So we'd love to know, what's the integration path for adding Dataships to an ecom platform? Because you're currently only working with Shopify and Klaviyo as a starting point. Is that correct? Or are you... So how is it? Is it a pre-existing app in the Shopify store that people just turn on? Does anyone need any technical resources to get this set up and work it?
Yeah, it's super simple. We're in the Shopify App Store, and install the app. There's just a couple of instructions. You take away the pre-existing tick box that Shopify has. That's just you toggle it off in your Shopify backend. So, then you enter in your Klaviyo API key, and it takes about 4 minutes, and off you go.
Okay, so the merchants don't need their own developers involved in this, because as soon as the app's installed, you're automatically...
No, sorry. No, you're spot on there. I was just saying...
cool. So
with some merchants, what we'll do is we'll just sit on a call and just talk them through the steps, but the app itself, is very clear and directs them through, and then we can see it on our end. If they do come up against any stumbling blocks, we can reach out to them.
Hypersonics helps e-commerce companies make more profit every day. This AI-driven platform delivers recommendations for pricing and inventory that lead to bigger profits. Visit hypersonics.ai/podcast to get a free trial.
Yeah, that's one of the great things about the modern SaaS e-commerce platforms and the app ecosystem is the pre-integrations take away the headaches people have had over the years where they try to integrate a new tool and it's cost them like $5,000 with a developer, and they've had to wait for development.
Yeah.
I love this approach to e-commerce. And I'm really intrigued to push on the Klaviyo bit because I know a lot of people using Klaviyo and I love it. It's a great tool. And preference center management is always something that comes up, especially in, I guess, the medium to large size businesses, about having a true preference center where they can manage more granular opt-ins and not just a yes, no. So how does Dataships and Klaviyo piece work? Are you simply pushing opt-in data into Klaviyo, or do you actually provide a preference center and then push all of that information and manage it? How does it work?
Yeah, we create two separate lists in their Klaviyo from the get-go. So the single opt-in and a double opt-in list that they can use whatever way they like. And then within each individual profile, we'll push in what we call the Dataships compliance status. So within Klaviyo at the moment, there's a consent tick or untick, but they also have like a yellow. And again, it's kind of unclear. What we find merchants don't really use that as their kind of source of truth because a lot of things can be pushed into that. And then what Klaviyo has in there as well is accepts marketing, true or false, which doesn't really, break out what type of marketing. Is it an email, SMS? And then accepts marketing is kind of a catch-all term to what does that actually mean? Does that mean that they have consented to marketing or that they haven't opted out of marketing? So there's two very different things from a data privacy perspective. And what we find often in Klaviyo is data might be collected in Shopify, it's pushed through to Klaviyo, accepts marketing. It says accepts marketing, and then the merchant just goes, great, let's go. There's a lot of nuances around, say, for instance, that rule that we were talking about earlier around soft opt-in. It's only valid if you're marketing a similar product or service. So if you're, DoD Electrical or Harvey Norman, you're selling a fridge and then you're selling a computer, that rule doesn't necessarily apply. Whereas if you're a marketer in Klaviyo and all you're seeing is accept marketing, then you're thinking, great, I'm going to go and just fire away and do this. And yes, we were talking to one of the kind of solution architects in Klaviyo yesterday, and he was saying this is a problem that they're seeing a lot because Klaviyo is an amazing tool, but it's reliant on what data is being pushed into it, right? So it's reliant on however somebody's configured it in Shopify. It's reliant on Shopify as the checkout, and it's getting past data that's not this one size fits all data. And then, so they're able to get a more granular view, but by using us, we work very closely with Klaviyo on that. And then in terms of preference center, we can feed into the Klaviyo. Feed into the Klaviyo preference center. We also have our own preference center. So if somebody wants to, if the end consumer for our clients wants to come on and view their preferences with the brand, they can do it directly through our tool and see how they, opted in to marketing, etc. Because it's all part of a wider movement of, the name Dataships comes back to the idea of data relationships and building good, healthy data relationships with your end user. And our kind of position on it is compliance doesn't have to be the scary kind of, zero-sum game with a consumer. You can build, if people are purchasing from you, they like your brand, they want to engage in you. I'm an Aston Villa fan. I want to hear when the new kit is launched. I want to get the ticket. I want to be opted in. I want to hear from all of these different things. If they're being, if they're sharing my data when they shouldn't be, all those kind of things come into it. But people think by having a preference center, people are automatically going to, unsubscribe or whatever it might be. Where we don't see that's the case.
And I know that you also have like a solution around the cookie consent piece as well. And I think I saw some stats somewhere that you're getting like a 95% acceptance rate. And the cookie bit, I know a lot of people in the e-commerce industry like me are totally frustrated by the various bodies who've been forced these massive site takeover cookie display things, but they're critical for compliance. So I'd love to know, how does Dataships approach this? What do you provide? And why is it so successful, do you think, in terms of why you're getting such high acceptance rates?
Yeah, I think like when we talk to our clients what they want from us and what they love from us is like, look, we want you to just go and solve this whole problem for us. And the data collection point is really the kind of the really tricky part, the really sore part. But then there are also like, cookies, privacy policies, all that kind of stuff. They just want, there was so much going on. But the more we go to some of these events and talk to e-commerce stores and see other speakers, we're actually blown away by wow, these e-commerce stores have so much to think about: inventory, 3PL, marketing, just everything. So if we can take stuff off their burden, then great. So what we did is we put together what we call a privacy center, and we populate that with kind of everything that they need from a defensive position to be compliant. So privacy policy, cookies policy, and the cookies tool. And what we've done with the cookies tool is it's just put a bit of thought into it, really, and we put it in the design of the brand. So we put it in their colors, their branding, so it's not quite as jarring. It also comes up in the corner of the screen rather than massively in your face. And just with a few kind of a bit of love and care in terms of some of those UX things, we've seen that it's got great acceptance rate, which is kind of not magic sauce there, but just putting a bit of thought into it has really helped.
Yeah, I think that user experience point is so important, because too many sites just allow generic consent banners to just appear and destroy the page. And then what you normally get is anger clicks, where people just click the first button to close it off, rather than actually thinking about whether they're not deployed in it. And what's your coverage at the moment? So because you pulled out some key markets like UK, Europe, Germany specifically, US. Are you global, or are there any territories you're not currently covering? And are you planning to expand into new countries from a consent point of view?
Yeah, so in terms of our rules engine, we're kind of expanding that all the time. I'm based in San Francisco. Our kind of main office is in Dublin, and then we have people in Birmingham and London. So our main client base will be UK, mainland Europe, and the US, selling to all the countries that you would think to, and then in the privacy engine, we're making sure that we've covered those countries that are the really important ones. When we cover a country, what that means is really diving into the local privacy laws to really understand what's needed. Is it a federal country like the US? Do they need different state level legislation? So there's quite a bit in covering a country. So some countries that we that we have, if the end user is in one of the countries that we haven't done, we would actually just surface a double opt-in consent or a single opt-in consent. In effect, meaning that our rules engine isn't pushing the boundaries. I think we'll default to the kind of highest standard of compliance. So we can still capture the end user, but only if they were to opt in. But yeah, in terms of coverage, we've got all the major markets: mainland Europe, North America. Got a lot of clients who are doing a lot in Asia, places like Singapore, Indonesia, China. So we cover those. Brazil we cover, and then some of the maybe smaller South American countries, not so much. But yeah, I think big areas of growth for us now. Countries like Australia and New Zealand, different platforms that you can integrate with. Obviously, we're Shopify Klaviyo based at the moment. We'd love to grow that and include a few of the other platforms in our stable as such. And then the other big one that we've been working on is SMS. It's obviously huge in the States, but we're definitely seeing it filter across to Europe and the UK. We're getting asked questions all the time by our brands, kind of going, look, are other brands doing it? We're keeping a close eye on it. We've noticed a few more messages coming through on our personal accounts, and they're definitely eager to look at it themselves. So we've gone about building out a rules engine for that, which does work differently, and Michael will be able to explain it better than me. If you want to continue on, Mike. Yeah, exactly. So, email was the first kind of channel that we started with, and now we're launching SMS. And the rules, again, people think like GDPR, it's a one size fits all, but it's really not. The rules around email and SMS are completely different. Interestingly as well, the US is really strict and stringent on SMS and not so much on email. Whereas in Europe, it's more or less the same rules for email and SMS. So, so that's building out that SMS. It works slightly different. Like we're able to pull more information from Klaviyo and things like that for SMS in some cases. So the solution will work differently. And then it's looking at, direct mail has been one that a lot of our clients are asking us for. Can they send postal campaigns to clients? Can they do that kind of thing? Push notifications. So working at these different channels, like social media audiences. So, really, like Ian said at the start, like what we're trying to become is that source of truth for marketing audiences. And then you can come to Dataships and say, okay, here's my email marketing audience in Canada. Here's my SMS audience for the UK. Here's my Facebook audience for whatever it might be. And you're saving the knowledge that it's compliant and that it's going to be, optimized and the biggest. The other important point there that we see a lot of clients mention is if, at the moment, all of their consent records, and which is really valuable data, is actually lives in Klaviyo or lives in Attentive or lives in whatever they might be using. And, there's some friction sometimes when a client wants to leave one of those platforms, take all that data with them, move to a competitor, and they might be stopped. I know certain SaaS tools make it very difficult for you to do that. So if you're a brand and you're thinking about how much future proofing, by audiences, having that third-party source of truth is really important as well. So lots on the road.
And where's your platform focus going to be? Are you going to be uniquely wedded to Shopify? Because it's got a huge ecosystem. The number of merchants using it has grown all the time. Or are you looking to be platform agnostic in the long run?
Yeah, I think ultimately platform agnostic. We've always been very careful to be kind of pulled by our clients. So when we started, like I said, it was really banks and large corporates, and then we got pulled into e-commerce. And everybody, we actually had clients who asked us to build, stuff for Shopify, so we did. And initially we were a custom app, and then we saw, okay, let's launch into the public app store. And we've been really, really, really surprised and really pleasantly surprised about how many, stores there are in there, incredible stores doing incredible business, incredible value. And they're all using a very similar tech stack. It's Klaviyo. I hadn't heard of Klaviyo, 2 or 3 years ago. And I don't think I've heard anybody use an email tool since different. They're all using, Gorgeous for their customer support. So there's a very kind of defined tech stack people are using. And with that becomes a very defined problem that, with collecting data on Shopify being one size fits all. And so far there's been, we've got great momentum in that ecosystem. There's great demand for people to use this. We do get some people saying, hey, we're on WooCommerce, hey, we're on BigCommerce. So we're kind of trying to figure out that next step of, do we really just concentrate on building out those channels like we talked about, SMS, etc., or do we, expand into other platforms? But I think ultimately, what we see our vision is we want our tool to be anywhere on the internet that somebody is collecting personal data. We want our tool to be there. So be it a WordPress site, a WooCommerce, whatever platform, or if they've just got their own site, that's kind of the vision that we're working towards.
Yeah, amazing. I could see it sitting nicely in the BigCommerce ecosystem as well. Hence the question. I love Shopify and BigCommerce and what they're doing, and they seem to attract a certain type of merchant who likes having in-class tools. The final question I've got around pricing. I know you've got a starter free version, and your model in pricing will be similar to people have experienced in ESPs, where it's based on the number of contacts. Do you want to talk us through who's a free version for? How do people get signed up on a free version, and then at what point do they move over to a paid version?
Yeah, we got a lot of people coming on just through the Shopify App Store. So it's free until they've had what we call 1,000 verified contacts. It's 1,000 people going through our widget that are either marked as marketable or non-marketable. So once you have that 1,000, you're going to have a pretty good sample size of, okay, large Dataships, about 22-25% of them are ending up as email marketable. Postos is 80%. We actually pull from Klaviyo their average order value to give them a revenue number, which says, okay, we've unlocked, 800 emails, 600 emails, whatever it might be. Your average order value is $40. Therefore, we call it potential unlocked revenue. Here are people that otherwise wouldn't be on your email marketing list that are. So if somebody who's bought from you already purchases once more, there's the revenue number. So we're able to kind of give that to them at the 1,000 orders. At which stage most people will say, "This is great, want to keep going." That's $60. 5,000 verified contacts moves to $250, 600 when you get to 20,000, etc., etc. And then with bigger brands, what we see is generally what we'll put in place there is we'll say we'll give on board for free. I know if they're doing 14,000 orders, 50,000 orders, so we're clients through 100,000 orders a month. So obviously they will go through those tiers pretty quickly. But with those type of clients, we'll just say, look, we'll let it run for about 2 weeks, so that we can gather a sample size, understand what your kind of volume is, and then we'll put in place, a stand, like a monthly fee, so that it's not fluctuating wildly. So what we found is brands don't like the uncertainty around, big spikes of Black Friday or whatever it might be. But yeah, free to get started in the App Store. Takes about 4 or 5 minutes, like we say, and then people can see on their dashboard how it's going. It gets pretty exciting as they see their conversion rate go up. And then we've so far not had anybody who hasn't actually gone up to the tier once they've asked them to pay that. $60 in the context of having added a lot of dollars in terms of potential revenue. So
the best way to explain our pricing, James, is we charge 1 cent per verified contact. So we're either giving them a non-marketable status or a marketable status, and then our pricing tiers reflect that. And as Michael touched on there, if our client wants to lock in a fixed pricing, we'll see kind of what velocity is going through their site and be able to negotiate with them then.
Yeah, it makes sense. And if anybody wants to reach out, they got more questions or want to probe further on what results you're seeing and in what type of business, who and how do they reach out?
Yeah, they can just go onto our website, dataships.io, or email either myself or Ian. I'm Michael at dataships.io and Ian at dataships.io. It's pretty simple. But yeah, we'd be more than happy to answer any questions. If there's any, the other thing is, we like to see ourselves as an extension of people's teams. And if people have just general questions about, hey, we're actually launching into Germany and we're trying to figure this out, or, if they're not on Shopify, we're still happy to help people answer questions. Like I say, we're coming from a place of dealing a lot with financial institutions and big corporates, and we're loving this e-commerce community of,
Yeah, and similar to that, we find that some brands be like, "Oh no, we've got someone looking after our email marketing," but we're more than happy to get in contact with them and speak to them and say, "Look, I know you're managing X's email marketing, but look, by installing the Dataships app, we can help grow the audience that you're going to be email marketing to, and then that's going to in turn make you look better." So we're more than happy to have those conversations as well.
Cool. Yeah, I think that's a nice distinction because you're not trying to take over from an email marketing platform. You're trying to enhance the data set and the accuracy of the data to do smarter marketing, which is really nice. Cool. Well, really appreciate the time, Michael, and Ian. Appreciate you coming on. I've enjoyed learning a bit more about the product as well. Do reach out, anyone who's listening, if you want to probe further on it. And also, thanks for listening. As always, keep your ear open. We drop the episode every week on Tuesday. And don't forget to give us that later on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever else you might be listening. Thanks, everybody. Speak to you soon. For more information on this topic, head over to replatform.fm for our audio podcasts. To discuss a project, or if you'd like to chat about any of the topics covered in this episode in more detail, please reach out to myself, James Gerd, or my co-host Paul Rogers via LinkedIn and Twitter. Thanks again for listening, and keep your ears peeled for the next episode.